Today, I'm speaking with Helene Godin, who is becoming quite renowned as the proprietor of By the Way Bakery. Now, By the Way Bakery at this point has four locations in New York and the tri state area. It also has its goods carried in some really impressive outlets from Whole Foods. I think it's 80 Whole Foods from New Jersey all the way up to Maine, incredibly Madison Square Garden as well, which I'll get her to talk about a little bit later. But first, Helene, how about the adjectives? By the Way, bakery is not just baked goods, it's baked goods that are
Gluten-free, dairy-free, and kosher parv.
now kosher parv means that it pairs with either meat or dairy. It also means that it pairs with fish, which I'm bringing up because, by the way, bakery bread, I think you said,
Our bread.
is served in the absolutely iconic Michelin-starred Le Bernardin in Manhattan as well. So that
Mhm.
proves the fish pairing. So, Helene, you used to be, I happen to know this, a lawyer. So, how did you go from being a lawyer who was involved in selling Audible to Amazon? And I think you also did entertainment law and some other kinds of law. How did you get from that to opening your first bakery and then having this bakery empire? Were you a kid with an easy bake oven and this is what you always did and you took home ec and so forth?
No, 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 no. I barely passed home ec, and while other kids may have been playing with an easy bake oven, I was the kind of kid who would, over Christmas break when I was in fifth grade, I would write an unassigned book report about Harry Truman and bring it in January when we returned to school. I had no interest in cooking, no interest in baking. I was very driven, and from the time I was a young child, I thought I want to be a lawyer, just like my dad, just like my grandfather. Went to law school and practiced for a total of 22 years. And it was only in the last 2 years of that journey that I was really kind of burnt out and decided that um, the craft of lawyering had changed, or I had changed. And even though I was working with great people and working on really interesting projects, I was done. I was totally done. And I quit without a plan because I didn't have time for a plan. I was working too hard.
So
And
you went home and you announced, I, Helene Godin, who has always been driven, I'm just going to lie on the couch.
right,
And you
close.
tried that for what, like an hour?
4 days, actually,
Okay.
4 days. Two of them were a Saturday and a Sunday. And I was walking down the street and I saw my neighbor and she said, "Oh my God, what are you doing home in the middle of the day?" And I said, "I just quit my job and I'm bored out of my mind." And in short order, I came up with this wacky idea that I was going to open a bakery in our little town. It was going to be a semi-retirement hobby kind of job. I announced this to my family at the dinner table, to which my children rightly respond, "But mom, you don't know how to bake."
Tell me this story about the first time that Whole Foods asked you to be in them and you turned them down.
No,
Is that a
so
legend, urban legend, suburban legend?
Whole Foods was working on expanding their gluten-free selections in the bakery department, and I was invited to be part of a bake off, as it was called, and I won the bake off. And so we were in Whole Foods starting in about 2013, but in 2004, and we were in two. They start you very small, which makes perfect
Okay.
sense. And so we were in two locations relatively close to the bakery in the suburbs of Westchester, and I got a call from uh, the another buyer who said, "So we're about to open a huge new flagship, and it's going to be on Third Avenue in Manhattan." And I said, "That sounds great, but we're not ready. So call me in a year."
Oh,
And JJ said, "We're Whole Foods. We don't call you in a year. This is your opportunity. If you want to do it, now's the time." And we did. And thank goodness. And at the time, I was the delivery person. I would deliver in my Mini Cooper. And I didn't even know we should deliver in boxes. I would put everything in shopping bags. And now my company has 3 trucks. We deliver all over. And it was a really good idea to accept that offer.
this all sounds a little haphazard, but can you tell me? if people like your stuff, you must have been more scientific about figuring out how to bake gluten-free and so forth.
My system was bake, bite, throw out.
Bake, bite, throw out.
Bake, bite, throw out, because I didn't know if it was going to work. And the first 4 months were dedicated to two things. One, perfecting the flour mix, because in gluten-free baking, you don't just take a cup of rice flour and you're done. There has to be a blend. And there's, different bakers use different blends. And I spent 4 months finding the right one with a blend of 5 different flours and the right ratio of those 5 flours. And at the same time working on, I think it was 6 core products that I knew I had to have, like a blueberry muffin and a chocolate chip cookie and a brownie. And when those 6 items worked with my flour mix, I was ready to move on. And I mean, the chocolate chip cookie literally took 52 tries.
Since you were initially planning to only be a local store, did you involve the other people in the neighborhood as taster?
Of course, totally. I'm fortunate. Jenny Rosenzweig, who is a very well-established blogger and cookbook author, her blog is Dinner Love Story. She lives across the street from me still. And she was one of my tasters. I had neighbors who had spent a lot of time in Europe, and they were one of my tasters. They were tasters. And I would just show up.
What about the organizational side? What was it like translating your prior life experience into running? How many employees do you have now?
I have 80 now.
Wow. So what's that been like?
Well, so first, I just want to say it wasn't just the baking part that I had to learn. I also had to set up spreadsheets for cost analysis, because if that cupcake costs $8 in ingredients, you're not going to be able to sell it. So, I mean, I was no purveyors wouldn't even really give me pricing at the beginning because I didn't have a store. So I just based it off, bulkfoodservice.com ingredients or even Amazon to figure out like, what would this cost me? And I had the same spreadsheet that I still use to this day. And, it's hard being a boss. And I started with an employee and a half. And to this day, I believe in the Danny Meyer philosophy that you got to take care of your employees as an employer. And I do my very best, and I'm always trying to do better.
How did it go during COVID? And I guess we can't say that we're past it, but how has it been going?
I was determined not to lay off a single employee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And at that point, I mean, we've actually grown a bit, even it's not post, but as New York anyway comes out of the thick of it, we've hired a few more people, but I did not lay off a single person. I would reduce shifts a bit, but I employ people who really needed the work. And so that's how we developed new products. It was a perfect opportunity. We did some renovations in our baking facility. And if we couldn't make custom cakes or wedding cakes for customers, my decorators would decorate for the camera. They would build a 4-tier cake. They would decorate it beautifully for the wedding that had been canceled, strip it, and decorate it again. And we would take a picture every time.
How about other entrepreneurs, either who are dreaming of doing something like this or who are already working on a small scale and want to grow? Do you have any tips? And also, most of my interviewees will not answer this question, but I think you are on the candid side of the spectrum. Any mistakes you've made that other people could learn from?
So to your first point, what I would say is my business has grown organically. I didn't set out to have 80 employees and be in 80 Whole Foods. To say I'm going to be the next Coca-Cola is a big jump. And, my hours, as I told you, were from 9 to 5, Wednesday to Saturday, closed Monday and Tuesday. I mean, it was to feel it out, to test it, to not take on too big a bite, too big a mission. As I started with a baker and a half, and I stood behind the counter, and I made sure when I say do research, it wasn't just, researching recipes and formulas. It was, to stand behind the counter and understand what customers are looking for, to make deliveries, to understand the delivery process, to do the ordering, to get to know the purveyors and understand how that all works. And so it's not always go big or go home. Sometimes those incremental steps are the better way to build a business.
Thank you so much, Helene, for spending this time with me. I know that you have many other things to do.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Micah.
Her company is By the Way Bakery. And the reason it's called By the Way is because it's supposed to be so good that it's only like, oh, by the way, it's kosher. By the way, it's gluten-free. And from all reports, you have achieved this. Her website is btwbakery.com. And thank you as well to our sponsor, Nextiva, for sponsoring this series of interviews with entrepreneurs and other people who can give us great business advice.